Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. This is Cavallonera, the black Tuscan kale. It's probably at its very best now, although it is one of the few brassicas that you can keep harvesting right through winter into spring. We will still be picking this next May, when all the other cabbages have long since finished. And when you cook it, just take the leaves off the stem, pull them off like that, and they are soft and tender. And in fact, all the brassica this year so far have been fine. The Cavallonera, the Savoys, the broccoli, the sprouts are looking good and coming on well. Coming up on today's programme, we discover the heavenly joys of Brugmansia, angel's trumpets.
Such a variety of colors and shape, there is no other flower like them.
Mark Lane reveals the secrets of designing the perfect formal garden.
They can be one of the most satisfying and striking of all outdoor spaces.
And I shall be making a topiary companion for Nigel. Won't I, Nelly? Come on. These are a selection of plants that I've brought out from the house because we do have quite a few house plants. And of course, house plants have become dead trendy. And I think the key thing is to understand that they are plants and they need looking after in much the same way as plants outside. So find out about the plant, see what it likes and give it the right conditions. And there's a huge range. You can have houseplants in the most unlikely of situations. Certainly for my generation, the most famous of the lot is this one, Aspidistra. And these became popular in Victorian times. The reason why Aspidistras were so common in Victorian houses and in the 20s and the 30s was because of the way that it grows. This is a plant that is happiest in cool, drafty, dark places. And the Victorian hallway with its tiles, its front door that was opening and closing the whole time was perfect for it. A centrally heated, bright, modern house, absolutely hopeless. They don't like it. So find the coolest, darkest part of your house, pop this in it, water it once a week at most. It'll be completely happy. And that's the key about houseplants, that it really goes back to the old thing, right plant, right place. So, for example, the maidenhair fern here, and I've got a couple of examples, and you can see that at its best, it's got these fabulous sort of chocolate black stems and these delicate fern heads balancing from it. But this one, you can see, is browning off and yellowing. And the reason for that is it's getting too dry. Maidenhair ferns love being wet, just moist air all around them. So in the house, where this is happiest is a bathroom. So keep it nice and moist, whereas if you have a pelargonium, this comes from South Africa, from the feinbosch, and it likes to be dry. That would hate being in a bathroom. That only needs watering about once every 2 weeks, and in winter, hardly at all, and it will be completely happy. There's a fern that I absolutely love called Phlebodium. It's a real beauty, very happy to be dry, and perfect for a darker side of the room. Overwatering tends to be the biggest problem. Spider plants, probably the best known of all house plants, and I water that when I remember, which is about once every 3 weeks. And if the plant starts to shrivel and brown, the instinctive answer is, oh my goodness, I need to give it more water. But very often that is the response to being overwatered. So go steady with the water. And the best weapon for ensuring houseplants are healthy is a mist sprayer. Use rainwater if you possibly can. Better to use tap water than no water at all. And just mist. And things like the maidenhair fern, I mist every time I walk past it, which I do about 6 times a day. The only plant that actually probably doesn't need misting at all is the pelargonium. So use the conditions you've got, even if it's one small room, find out a little bit about the plants, and then it's easy. Give it a go. There is no reason where you can't have all the pleasures of a garden in one small room. Now, I'll take all these back indoors and put them where they want to be. And I am getting increasing pleasure from them. But that doesn't mean to say that at heart I'm not instinctively an outdoors person. I like getting my hands in the soil, whatever the season, whatever the weather. And it's always good to hear the experiences of someone else who has spent their life gardening. And we went to meet Luigi Balducci and hear of his experiences and passion of growing a wide range of plants from his allotment in Shropshire.
I've been here for over 45 years. I love this so much. My wife, she says to her friends that she is the allotment widow because I spend more time here than at home. When I first came here, it was a mess. So I started growing things progressively. I built up like that, and eventually I ended with 3.5 allotment. I was young then and strong. I'm still pretty strong even now. I grow many different things, like chicories. I grow 14 varieties of chicories. I grow giant tomato, Magyar giant, I call them. They grow over 1 kilo. I know some of 1.5 kilos, like melon. This is a Bieta, which is, we call it Swiss chard here. Nice. My love is the Brugmansia. Practically for love at first sight, really. People call it wrongly Datura. Angel trumpet. I saw in my sister-in-law garden this extraordinary flower. Such a variety of colors and shape, and unusual. There is no other flower like them. Mainly are 3 types of flower. The trumpet-like, the funnel type, and the tuber type. And I fell in love with these plants, and I started buying them from everywhere. And eventually, I grew so many varieties, about 80, it became a national collection. Often people think that the Brugmansia are poisonous. They're not deadly. They're not poisonous, unless you eat them. But you need to treat them as a little child in the winter. But in bed, they don't like 0-degree temperature and below. They die. Every year you must repot them. Feed them well and give them plenty to drink. That's it. They come from Central America and Southern America, which is warm. If I tell you there are about 8,000 varieties, well, this is so. It's crazy. Here, one very pretty and one of my favorite. As you can see, it's a small flower, tubular shape, and this is called amethyst. And this is it. I love it. This is a variegated variety because the leaves are all variegated. You can see it's called sunset. And this is, which is very pretty, is the true variety, wild variety, which is arborea. The Brugmansia is woody. It's a tree, in fact. They can grow up to 8 meters. You can prune them heavily. Look at that. I pruned them to that last year. All this is this year growth. So there you are. If you are a beginner, they're very easy, don't worry. You take cotton from the woody part, drop it in a pot, in a glass of water, and after a week or so, they start forming some little roots. Then you pot them, and that's it. With all this fantastic collection, so people say, I decided one day to present them at the flower show in Shrewsbury. And we won silver. Oh, that encouraged us. I said, well, next year what shall we do? Shall we create a garden? And we won gold and a cup. That was the start of, of something that really stimulated me, really my imagination and everything. And we won 7 gold medals, 7 years in a row, and 1 in Tatton, which I was very, very proud. But you see, the great advantage is that nobody had Brugmansia. I only had Brugmansia, so see, the secret is that, to be the only one. If you want to be happy for life, create a garden. You see, this is my gym, working, digging. And when I go on my knee to weed, then is my church, you see. The Brugmansia, to me, they are everything, because without them, I wouldn't have done all this, because it attracted many people, many enthusiasts, and I like to share my enthusiasm about things.
What a lovely man. And it does explain something which I'd wondered for ages. I love the expression that Brugmansia are like children. They need changing often. I used to grow Brugmansia, and we had them, and they were big, and they flowered well, and it was one of those things I took for granted, and then they stopped flowering. And of course, poor things were hungry. I should have potted them on, given them more food. So I'm definitely going to grow Brugmansias again. Now, you may know that I'm in the process of making a topiary Nigel, made out of yew, and it is beginning to look dog-like, although I have to say at the moment it is, just like Nigel himself, extremely shaggy and needs a haircut, and now is a really good time to trim yew or box topiary. And it's also a really good time to plant yew or box to make topiary. And the time has come to make a topiary now. Are you aware of that, my dear? I'm using yew. Now, these are cuttings that I took a couple of years ago. People always say that yew is really slow growing, but look how vigorous this is. These are very healthy young plants, but I do need to prepare the ground. The first thing to do is to dig it over and break it up. And then I'm just going to sprinkle some grit on it. Yew is very adaptable. It'll grow in sun, it'll grow in shade, and it'll grow in most soils, but it will not grow in waterlogged soil. It hates that. So we'll sprinkle the grit over the surface and then fork it in. When you're adding grit, don't add it to the planting hole and then just sit the plant on top of it, because that will create a sump. And actually, the roots will sit in water. It'll make it wetter. So what I thought we'd do is plant a cutting for each of the legs, and then another one sort of in the chest body area, because that's where we're going to have most bulk. And when you're choosing material, you need to think about the ultimate shape. So if you're making a topiary cone, for example, you need a nice straight leader. Well, in this case, we don't need a tall leader, but we do need to be able to bend plants. So if we put this one in here, like that. Because I've got lots of flexible growth, I could train that up. I could train it up. I could even train it to grow like that if I wanted to. The one thing to remember when you're training any plant, but particularly something like topiary, which is long-term, is that the inclination of the plant is always to grow vertical. You get maximum growth upwards. So if you train it sideways, the horizontal growth will be very slow indeed, and then you'll get lots of shoots coming up. So I'll put that into place. I like this one here. Come on, how'd you come? How about that for a root system? I'm so pleased with these cuttings. If I pop this in here, there we go. And that's your other leg. And that will come up there. Now the back legs. When you start at this stage of any piece of topiary, it is a leap of faith. No one else is going to remotely see what it's going to look like. So the important thing is just to get healthy plants growing in the right place so they have the potential for what you want. So, 2 back legs, 2 front legs, and I'm going to plant one more, what I've learnt from Nigel, one more in here to give myself a little bit more body. This one here is a nice one. There we are. It's going to be smaller than life size, and it is going to take a few years before it resembles anything like an animal, let alone a very particular dog with her particular look. But we'll get there. Now, with topiary, you can make whatever you want. Imagination is the only limitation, and it can be as weird and as wonderful as you like. But the truth is, you as a plant is absolutely integral to formal gardens of any kind and has been for hundreds of years. And Mark Lane has been looking at different garden styles and extracting the elements of them so that we can all use them in our own gardens at home. And this week, he is down in Hampshire visiting a formal garden.
For me, formal gardens bring all the elements of a garden design together, such as balance, rhythm, line and focal points. I've come to a garden in Hampshire where garden designer Adam Vetteray has created a stunning formal space. Adam, here we are in this beautiful, stunning potager part of your garden. Obviously, a potager is a very formal way of growing vegetables.
Absolutely.
Why do you love a formal garden, Adam?
I love the structure of a formal garden. I love the balance. My father is Italian. We travelled to Italy on holidays.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in the Italian gardens. The formality, the control, really.
Yeah.
I really like that. A formal garden, to me, it has to have symmetry. It can be straight lines, as we've got here, but it also can be flowing. You can have a very formal garden that can be very curvy. It depends how you want to use the planting in that design.
And if there was one plant that sums up a formal garden, what would it be?
For me, it's the Philarea latifolia.
And why is that?
It's a wonderful plant, dark green leaves. If you look at the leaves, they've got very serrated edges as well. The structure that you can create with a Philarea, the wonderful gnarled trunk, nice shiny leaves, just wonderful.
To get ideas and inspiration on how to get the formal look, where best to go than the Tudor period, where they wanted to create the perfect knot garden. They wanted strong geometric patterns, straight lines, balance, structure, and they really wanted to show man's dominance over nature as a reaction to the landscape. Inside, they would originally have had coloured gravel, but now we can fill them with abundant plants. The contemporary architecture of the building here really lends itself to the formal design. There's this really strong central line that comes all the way down this lovely slate staircase. And then repeated are these pots of pelargoniums mirroring each other. and then that line is continued as we come down onto the lawn. Then, on a completely different axis, we get these two wonderful focal points at the far end. Perfect symmetry. Almost any plant can be used to create a tailored look. Even plants associated with naturalistic prairie planting, like Rudbeckia and Echinacea, when planted in blocks or mirrored, can evoke the formal feel and add a dash of colour. The classic plant for any formal garden is the box. It is easy to grow and can be topiarised into any shape. The only trick is to keep on top of the clipping. For a bit of a twist, how about Elaeagnus? Or cloud pruning as an alternative technique. For a small space, plant up some pots with similar plants. Remember to keep it simple and arrange them geometrically to create a sharp look. A classic clean look can be achieved for your fruit by using espalier or fan-trained trees. By keeping your lines simple, clean and straight, when your paths intersect, like it does here, it's really good to have some accents. And here we have these 4 box balls. They're perfect because they lead you round the corner to another part of the garden. What's also really lovely is this hornbeam hedge. It actually acts like a framework around this part of the garden, and it's been clipped really well. It's got a great height to it, but what it also does is that it makes this garden a separate space, so it actually makes the whole garden feel a lot bigger. Formal gardens can be a challenge to get right, with meticulous care and maintenance. Yet with confidence, they can be one of the most satisfying and striking of all outdoor spaces.
I do think the key to any formal garden is a good symmetrical formal structure. Now, I've got more topiary, and this is the original yew Nigel, which we planted exactly 5 years ago. And you can see it's got very shaggy this summer, just like Nigel himself. So what I need to do is just trim this back, not too hard at this stage. I can always cut more off. So that's his back there. And the sides here we want to curve round a little bit. Getting slightly portly in his old age, but we'll give him a little bit more of a nipped-in waist than perhaps he has in real life. I could give you a punk haircut, Nigel. There's still a bit of finessing to do, but at least Nigel is beginning to appear through the fuzz of excess growth. Now, still to come, Adam returns to Leicestershire to finish off the garden that he's been creating and designing from scratch for Amit and Vibhuti. But first, Francis has been to Somerset to meet somebody growing a range of truly exotic vegetables.
I think you'll agree that not every summer here in the UK is as scorching as the one we've just had. But here in Somerset is a woman who manages to grow plants, whatever the weather, that would be more at home in the heat of Southeast Asia. Oh, and I'm told they're rather delicious. Originally from North Thailand, near Chiang Mai, Nidhil moved here 26 years ago. Her garden has 2 polytunnels, a greenhouse, and lots of containers, full with exotic vegetables and herbs. What made you decide to grow these kinds of plants in this kind of climate?
When I came here first time, We can't buy Thai ingredient around where we live. I have to go to London to do it. And then I thought, you know, summer here, just like winter in Thailand, because we grow vegetable in Thailand in the winter.
Okay.
So I started from there and to try to grow lemongrass or sort of thing. And they work very well, so that make me, you know, want to do more and more. And I love it as well.
Yeah.
Like the challenge, you know, when you start this, start that, and they work well.
It sounds like you have a natural ability if you can grow those kinds of things here in a tough climate. I would love to see some of them. Could you show me?
Yeah, I will show you around.
So tell me what you have growing here.
Do you know that kaffir leaf?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've tried to get hold of this. You can only get it dry, really, can't you?
Yeah, you can buy kaffir fruit sometime in the shop.
Yes.
And then you're collecting the seed to grow from there.
Oh, straight from the fruit?
Yeah, the
Okay.
seed, collecting the seed. And then if you want to grow again, you just cut the stem and you just put in a pot compost and they're growing
So
again.
they take well from cuttings quite easily.
Yeah.
Now, we can't ignore this. What is this?
Snake gourd, long snake gourd.
And what do they
Other one
taste like?
is- Tastes close to gourds. But
Okay.
it's not the same.
It feels
yeah.
quite soft, doesn't it? So it's not
Yeah.
like a lot of
Yeah,
gourds.
yeah. When you cook it, quite a lot of water.
Okay.
Quite a lot
Okay.
of water. It's got seed inside now.
And quite a big meal.
Yeah. That one snake for what? For 4 people?
Yeah, do you think four hungry people? That is amazing, isn't it? And this one is
Loofah.
a loofah. I thought so. Okay.
Smoked loofah. Yeah, smoked loofah.
So you're
Yeah.
not cooking with this. You're
Yes.
using it. You are cooking
We
with it.
eating.
You
yeah.
eat the loofah
Yeah.
because I only know it as something that you grow and you dry,
Yeah.
and then you use it to wash with.
We like to cook in stir fries,
Okay.
curries, or boil and dip with chili sauce.
Nice. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Outside, nestled under a verdant banana tree, is a healthy clump of peppery Vietnamese coriander. There are rainbow-coloured chilies and long green aubergines. Your lemongrass is incredible. How many years has that taken to get so big?
No, this is from last year.
Really?
Yeah, I grow them every year.
So you
Yeah.
start with one blade,
Yeah,
stem
one
of
stem,
grass,
yeah.
propagate from that with...
Soak in a glass of water and keep on windowsill in kitchen. Yeah.
Okay.
And when the weather is warm, we just put in the pot with compost and keep in a greenhouse or conservatory.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say in June, July, so I move them out to the garden. I just leave it there until maybe September, November.
And is there a reason why everything is in pots?
Easy to look after, like very cold weather coming, you just, move
them all
in.
around.
Yeah, so you can move around.
It is
Yeah, you're talking about
amazing.
taking care.
It's intensive care, isn't it?
My baby.
Wow. This is a jungle. This is amazing.
Yes, Thai jungle.
Yeah. Look at your aubergines. They are incredible.
I know, many different aubergine.
How do you grow them so that they're so perfect?
Right, we start from a seed. Of course, we need to look after, and you need to keep the spec like a little bit wider for them.
Yeah.
For the plant, have the room, the air growing.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah.
I think people are often tempted, especially in a small space, to cram it.
Yeah.
But actually, you have so many fruits on each one, and you haven't crammed it. It's very
No.
neat.
Yeah.
Of course, Nid's success at growing all this wonderful Thai veg means she has all the ingredients needed to create all her favourite meals. Today she's cooking with her homegrown snake gourd, along with Thai sweet basil and some chilli. I can't wait to taste it. Try
Try
this.
that.
That's lovely. Very refreshing.
And quite healthy to eat as well, and very simple to cook.
I will definitely be growing snake gourds next year. But isn't it amazing to think that all this vegetable is just here in your garden in Somerset? And now we're having an amazing Thai dish.
And you can do it.
Absolutely.
You can
Thank
do
you
it.
so much for teaching me how to cook and grow them.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you. Want more and more and more.
Yeah, me too.
Here in this greenhouse, I confess I've got nothing exotic growing, but I'm very happy. In fact, more than that, I'm really delighted with the way that these grapes are growing. Look, this is the grapevine, black Hamburg grape, and I've made a real point this year of pruning hard. And so far, that is a complete success story. I can't say the same about my tomatoes, but I know I'm not alone in this. I've talked to a lot of people who've had problems with tomatoes, and that might seem counterintuitive on a year like this. You'd think tomatoes would love it, but there have been really 3 problems that people have mentioned again and again. The first is blossom end rot. This is a perfect example. If I pick this and show you what looks like a perfectly good tomato, then when you look at the bottom, it's collapsed and turned brown. It's like a sort of callus. And this year, when we've had extreme heat, the poor plant has not really had a consistent water supply. And the one thing that tomatoes like is consistency. Regular temperature, regular water, and that is a very common reaction. The good news is there's nothing wrong with the plant. There's nothing wrong actually with a tomato. It's perfectly edible. Just don't eat that bit. The second problem that a lot of people have mentioned to me is splitting. We have fruits that seem to be fine, but the skins are split, and that's because they're overwatered. It's as simple as that. They just swollen and burst. And the third problem, which I've got here very markedly, is an awful lot of green fruit that are not ripening, or at least are ripening very slowly. And that is a result of the heat. Tomatoes actually ripen best at between about 24 to 30 degrees centigrade. And we've had day after day, if not week after week, above 30, particularly in a greenhouse. And that inhibits ripening. Having said that, the tomatoes that have ripened, I think, have been particularly tasty. So it swings and roundabouts. I've got 2 lots of cuttings here. There's the penstemon that I took just a week or so ago, which are showing no real signs of growth, but are still alive, which is great, and the rosemary, which I took about a month ago, which are growing well. And I was thinking that we do talk a lot about cuttings on Gardener's World, and we show you how to do them, but they tend to be geared towards individual plants. So I thought I'll give you just a little rundown, if you've never taken cuttings before, about why they're a good idea, and to encourage everybody to have a go. There are 2 really good reasons for taking cuttings. One is because you can get a lot of new plants for nothing. And the second thing is that they are clones. Every cutting is identical to its parent. So if you have a favourite shrub, you can guarantee that you'll get more exactly like it. And you can't always do that from seed. Now, the first thing to understand is that if I take a piece of rosemary like this, and if I cut a piece off, if I stuck that in the ground, in theory, it would grow roots and become a new rosemary plant. That is a cutting. But there are fundamentally 3 different types of cutting. The first is a softwood cutting. You can see the top is soft, whereas down the bottom, it's not. And it's very recent growth. It only stays soft for a matter of weeks. And if we cut that off, so we've got just the soft part, that will make a little cutting. Now, the advantage of that is that it does form roots really quickly. And particularly in spring and early summer, there is masses of material for this. But, and this is the big but for most of us, you have to be quick. The newer and the softer the growth, the quicker it will die. Because the leaves transpire. And they don't stop transpiring just because they're not taking up new moisture. That can only happen with roots. So it's an absolute race between producing those roots and dropping dead. And that's why we strip off leaves from cuttings to reduce the surface area which can let moisture out. So that would be a typical softwood cutting, and we put that into a growing medium. And the next type of cutting is semi-ripe, and that's more or less what we're taking at this time of year. Now, if I strip that off like that, you can see we've got some soft material, which is fairly recent, and then a plug of brown material, which is older. And that will die much slower. It'll produce its roots a bit slower too, but it buys you more time. If I take a hardwood cutting, which is all brown, then you've got loads of time. Now, I've got a rose here, nice rose stem, and you can do this, by the way, any time from now through till Christmas. Hardwood cuttings take perfectly well in winter. And I've cut a length of rose, and if I then divide that up, I'm just going to cut it like that and like that. I've got myself 3 strong cuttings. Now, a tip is just to cut the top at an angle. It's simply so that you know that that is the top, because what we're going to do next is strip off most of the leaves. And so you have a woody stem, the thickness of a pencil, quite long. And with this one, you need a deep pot, and then we bury it right down in like that, as deep as it will go. Now, that won't die for months, but it's very slow to produce roots. However, it's a really good way to make new plants from roses, from soft fruit, trees and shrubs, and it doesn't need any kind of protection. Softwood cuttings need mollycoddling. Semi-ripe cuttings need a bit of attention, keep spraying, a bit of bottom heat if you've got it. These guys can go outside in a trench and you can forget about them. And this here is a rose cutting I took last year. And you can see I've got a brand new rose, and I will plant that out into the garden next spring. Having taken your cuttings, they will be more likely to strike if you can protect them from direct blazing sun, if you can keep the air around them moist, hence really good to give them a puff with one of these, and also if you can apply a little bit of heat to the bottom, but don't put them on a windowsill with a radiator blasting underneath, because they'll just dry out. Now, this is all about making new plants from scratch. But Adam has gone one better than that. Over the last few months, he's been making a new garden from scratch with a couple from Leicestershire. And he went back to pay his final visit.
It's been 4 months since I first started designing a new build garden. Since then, Amit and I have landscaped the garden, building a retaining wall and 2 terraces. Today is finally time to bring the garden to life. Amit, nice to see you, mate.
And you?
You've been really busy. Back fence is all painted.
All painted, done, yes.
But it looks really good.
It does.
I think it tones in nicely, picks up on the grey paving, but straight away I think it looks softer as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Budget-wise, I know you've spent a little bit more, haven't you?
Yeah, we have, but we've also used what we had here previously. We've used the oak sleepers that we had previously and added to. The paving we've used again. We've lifted it up, had it cleaned. Nice to use what you've got there.
You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. After months of planning and hard work to get the landscaping right, today is the big day. Finally, we can start planting. Last time we looked at some plant choices, and the first thing I want to tackle is the fence. Vibuti and Amit wanted to mask the impact of the wall at the back of the garden, so we have 3 climbers to clamber across it. So I think the Clematis montana, which gives you good early flower, goes over on that wall there. And the wisteria that you've got, though it loses its leaves, I think structurally, when it gets going, they look fantastic. And then what I'll do is put the jasmine over there, because that's a summer flowering, so June through to, say, September. So when you're out there in that space, you can have a beautiful scent. So get them in, yeah?
Okay.
When it comes to clematis, it's a plant that a lot of people worry about. But this montana's quite easy. As you're planting them, I always make sure that I dig a really sort of deep hole, a good sort of 50 mil, a couple of inches lower than the top of the pot. So really bury the root down. It loves to be roots in the cool and heads in the sun. Next thing here is the mycorrhizal fungi, which to me, especially on a new site, is important. Sprinkle that over the roots and then that falls into the hole. This Clematis montana may look a little bit lost at the moment, but left to its own devices, it will soon rampage up over the fence and give a wonderful display all through the spring. We have talked an awful lot about the trees for this garden and what they're going to do to help sort of start to screen that back wall. But we've got a really good array. We've got good bark with our Pruna cerula. That'll be fantastic multi-stem tree right through the winter, but it's got a little flower on it as well. Come to the Malus. This I love because you get that really early good flower from it. But the fruits that are on here now can hold right into the winter months. And then last but not least is Amelanchier, which is probably my favourite small garden tree because you get early flower, then you've got a berry, and then after that you've got fantastic autumn colour. So, we best get them in. When it comes to staking, most important things really to know is difference in the winter when we've got bare root trees and you sort of have an open hole and you can work the stake down between the roots, that's fine. But something like this that's container grown, I don't want to just smash it straight through the roots. So I've gone across more or less sort of 45 degrees and then we just get the tile. Like that, we can just trim that off with a pair of secateurs. But what you've got to do is make sure that that block sits between the tree and the stake because you do not want these two rubbing together. All we've got to do is just trim the stake off. So there you go. And now to the shrubs, which will provide the next layer of structure. The Pittosporum works well against the fence. The Viburnum has wonderful form and flower. And the Rosa glauca not only has lovely flowers, but gorgeous hips too. You know, now we can sort of add the herbaceous plants, which are perennials, going to give you a nice bit of flower right through the year. So I think with the anemones, work those round just between the rosemary and the rose. Just take a couple round there, and then I'll work one over here as well. So instead of just putting the whole lot in one block, it's just a little bit of sort of rhythm and movement through. So a couple up there and then one down here just gives a lovely sort of sense of movement through the garden. The wonderful thing about herbaceous perennials, not only do they bring colour and interest to the garden, but you can divide them and split them up. Realistically, as long as they've got a good root system in when you buy them, you can do that to them any time of the year. I probably, in reality, would wait till the back end of the summer, but as long as you're there to look after it and water it, especially something like a Juga, which is as tough as old boots, you end up with a couple of plants, which, not that I'm tight, but that puts a smile on my face. The garden is nearly there, just the lawn to go. When you lay turf, make sure you have an evenly raked surface. Then start by laying the turfs around the edges. It's crucial to have tight joints to ensure the grass knits together well. There you go, one lawn. All we need to do with this now, get some water on it. It will root this time of year quite quickly, so a couple of weeks, and then stay off it as long as you can. It may be a new garden, but over the years the trees will grow and mature, not only creating a great canopy, but providing blossom and bark for year-round interest. They will also help attract wildlife into the garden, which is something that Amit is really keen to do. The shrubs will fill out and provide the borders with structure and shape. We've planted perennials which will add punches of colour year after year. And the centrepiece, a perfect patch of lawn for baby Yash to play on safely. What do we think?
Fantastic.
Pleased?
Oh, definitely, yes.
What a difference a few months make. Vibuti and Amit now have a large patio complete with dining area to entertain friends and family.
Barbecue.
We've never had a barbecue.
Not here, not here.
And it's about time, I think.
We've not had a garden until now.
There's a small patio at the back of the garden, a perfect place to catch the last rays of the evening sun. I think you guys, small table, just enjoying tea would be
Definitely.
lovely, wouldn't it?
He can come out here and make his mess here instead of inside the house.
this is the beginning of their gardening adventure. The rest will be up to them. But I'm really pleased with how it's turned out.
Enjoy it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Now let's take that out. Put that there for the moment. I do think that after all the busyness of the landscaping and getting in dramatic permanent planting, the next stage of the garden, where you start to infill and people give you plants, or maybe you divide plants after a year or two, that's the real pleasure of gardening. It becomes personal. The whole process is organic and takes on its own life. And I envy them for the next few years. Now, this is Crocosmia lucifer. And it's got a mass of foliage, very healthy, nothing wrong with it at all. But the flowers, and you can see here the spent flower heads, the seed heads, are a little sparse in relationship to the foliage. It's not flowering as vigorously as it certainly was, and as it could do, if I divide it. And September is the perfect time to lift and divide Crocosmia when they finish flowering. And then you can replant them in order to have a much better display next year. Now, I could lift the whole thing, I suppose, but it's a large plant. So what I'm going to do is just try and chop out a section at this stage. What I'm looking to do is leave in about half of it and take out the rest, which I can divide up into suitable chunks. There we go. Right. Now what you'll see, I hope, is that the Crocosmia is made up of corms, and they build up on top of each other in layers. And you can just tease these apart. There we are. So you've got, it looks like those stones you see on the beach, stacked on top of each other. A little tower of corms. You've got an older corm, which is big, and another one that's developed right on top of it, and then a little one, and another one, and a little baby one, which I've sliced through. And if I plant both of those, they will make me a new, decent, healthy plant. And I could divide this up, because if you see, if I take that out, you can see that there we have a single corm with a stem. Now, if I plant that on its own, that will make a perfectly good new Crocosmia plant. And when you do plant it, whether it's in a big clump or it's a stack of corms, Crocosmia do best if they're planted nice and deep. Don't just put them beneath the surface. Dig a full hole, the depth of your spade, and put the corms down the bottom, because they like to be fairly damp. They don't like to dry out too much. And you can either plant them in individually, sort of 7 or 8 in an area, or a big clump. And if you've got any really old bits, chuck them away. Now, all this is part of the planning for next summer's display, so it can be as vibrant and as dramatic as possible. It's looking a year ahead. But Carol has been to RHS Rosemoor in Devon, where the garden is flowering gloriously right now.
As summer draws to its conclusion, there's a whole range of plants that are just raring to go. Plants that will provide brilliant colour for months on end. But probably the brightest star in the garden is the Rudbeckia. Rudbeckia hail from North America, where they're native to prairies and open woodlands. They're named in honour of a Swedish botanist, Olaf Rudbeck Jr. Commonly, they're known as black-eyed Susans. Rudbeckias are daisies, part of the biggest flowering plant family in the world, Asteraceae. Some are annuals, most are perennials, including this one, which is probably the most popular of the lot. It's called Rudbeckia goldstern, storm of gold, and it's certainly that. At the base, they have this big rosette of plain, simple leaves, often rough-edged and rough in texture too. Both the leaves and the stems are really rough, which means that they seldom get attacked by slugs. The stems are branching, and at the end of each branch is a flower. These petals, which are correctly called ray florets, surround the place where the real business goes on. First of all, these just look like black blobs, but when you look more closely, they're composed of lots and lots of tiny, tiny flowers, or disc florets. Each of those flowers opens in turn, in a spiral, from the outside right into the middle, and it provides pollen and nectar for weeks on end. Once they're pollinated and the petals begin to fall, they'll leave behind them beautiful seed heads, which are attractive to birds. They can feed on them, and you can leave them right the way through the winter. They look terrific. This is Rudbeckia fulgida, variety Demii. It's a perennial Rudbeckia, and it's my all-time favourite. It's a true perennial, and it demonstrates what perennial Rudbeckias do. It'll gradually colonise a piece of ground by spreading out its stoloniferous roots just below the surface of the soil and then forming a new rosette. You can detach these and make new plants from them too. Although it likes sun, it doesn't like poor, dry soil. They really thrive on organic matter, so put plenty in when you're planting them. Now, with most daisies, you'd want to deadhead them to keep the flowers going, but not so with Rudbeckias, because one of their charms is that the seed heads are so beautiful too, and each stem will produce lots and lots of branches, so there are flowers at different stages. But with annual Rudbeckias, it's a really good idea, once that initial flower has gone, to deadhead right down to the next buds. That means they'll produce loads more flowers and keep going for much, much longer. Once you've grown Rudbeckias, you'll want more, and they're very easy plants to propagate. As far as perennial Rudbeckias go, the best way is by division. You can also grow perennial Rudbeckias from seed. In the spring, take a seed tray full of good seed compost, firm it down, sprinkle the seed very sparingly on the surface. Put grit over the top of it and stand the whole thing in shallow water. When you see that the surface grit is damp, take out the tray, let it drain, and this will pull the seeds down into intimate contact with the compost. Keep it in a nice, warm, bright place, but not in full sun. After a couple of weeks, your seed should germinate. There are about 25 species of Rudbeckia and numerous cultivars. Here are some that'll look great and do well in our gardens. For the price of a packet of seeds, you can fill your beds and borders with annual Rudbeckias. Like this one, it's Rudbeckia hirta Prairie Sun, very aptly named, with these two-tone yellow petals. And it provides brilliant splashes of colour amongst perennials and other annuals that are beginning to die down. Rudbeckia laciniata herb sonna, meaning autumn sun, is one of the tallest of all Rudbeckias. It can stand up to 2 metres high. And although it stands up for itself in a windy position, it may need a bit of help. It differs from most Rudbeckias in other respects. Although its daisies open flat, eventually the petals become elongated and hang down, giving it the most elegant deportment. Also, rather than the black eyes of most black-eyed Susans, it has a green central cone, which stands proud of the flower. Rudbeckias are brilliant. They're simple yet very distinctive. They're easy to grow, incredibly accommodating. And their colour, yellow, they say, is the colour of the positive. And these are such optimistic flowers, leading us forward into the new season with joy and gaiety.
although I love the exuberance of the really tall Rudbeckias and the brilliance of that yellow, I've never really understood why people get sniffy about yellow. It's wonderful to have in the borders. I also like some of the other colours that they do. And of course, Rudbeckias don't just come in yellow. I've got one here called Summerina Brown. Now, although the name is a little bit like a Hollywood starlet, it's actually filled with all those lovely colours of the season that are so particular to this time of year. And I've made space because I've cleared quite a lot of Crocosmia. Now, if I put a clump in like this, they'll give me colour for another 3 or 4 weeks, and they're herbaceous perennials, so they'll die back, but come back next year, and I can plant around them. And actually, I've still got room for a few more bits and pieces. Okay, that's my Rudbeckias planted. Now here's some jobs for you for this weekend. Right across the country, grass took a battering from the hot, dry summer. It will recover, but there will be the odd bare patch, and now is the time to repair it. Give it a good hard rake to disturb the soil and remove any loose material. The ground's very dry, water it first, and then sprinkle seed onto the damp ground. Water it again, and it will germinate very quickly and fill the gap. Now is a good time to sow hardy annuals like these Nigella. You can sow them direct, whether to grow or in a seed bed, but I'm using recycled plugs. Sprinkle a few seed into compost in each plug, put them somewhere protected but without any extra heat where they can germinate, and then you can plant them out in autumn or even next spring. When your agapanthus have finished flowering, cut the seed heads off. Do this by cutting the flower stalks right at the base. And this will mean that the plant will put all its energy into the roots for next year's flowers rather than into the developing seeds. I've got a gap here, right down the other end of the jewel garden for where I took out the Crocosmia, that I can put in a good clump. And I'm thinking now not of it working in with the palette that is here right now, even though I love it. I love the Nymphophia and that David Howard Dahlia. And then the cannas, which have been so good, despite being so hot. The cannas have loved it this year. I'm thinking of next July, when the Crocosmia will be at its most dramatic. And of course, this cardoon, poor old thing, which is a raggedy skeleton of itself. Next July, the leaves will be strong with a lovely glaucous colour, and then the Crocosmia will work with that. And I really enjoy the way that at this stage of the year, you're planning and dreaming of next summer. But I'm afraid there's no more planning and dreaming to be done today, because that's it, we've run out of time. But I'll see you back here, same time, next Friday at Longmere. Till then,